Welcome back to the Student Hub Live Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences Showcase. Well, this is a very exciting session. I know a lot of you are looking forward to it because we're going to be talking about the new BA Honours in Music and discussing some of the new and exciting modules, A272 Music, Sound and Technology. And also we're going to tell you about the OU's really innovative collaboration with Trinity, Laban, Conservatoire of Music and Dance. So whether or not you're interested in studying music, this session will be very, very enjoyable to learn about distance education and how innovative the Open University are more generally. So I'm going to be talking to Robert Samuels and also Ben Winters. Robert is the author of one of the new modules that we produce with another institution, and Ben has also been developing the degree qualification, which we're going to talk about today. Now you'll see a widget, an interactive voting tool on the screen, and it says, what is this sound? Now you're not going to be able to answer that until we play you the sound in a little bit, although you're very welcome to vote and you can change your mind. You just select on the item that applies, so you can choose footsteps in the snow, a dog eating a carrot, or a nearly complete TMA, which is tutor marked assignment, for those of you who don't know. Okay, so Ben, let's talk about the degree overall. We've got a number of different modules, and also we have a degree level and a certificate level as well. So I wonder if you can tell us how it all works.
Well, it's a really kind of exciting new degree for us because it offers students the opportunity to study music at degree level, even if they've had no prior experience of studying music at all, which is really something quite unique in the higher education environment. So it works in much the same way as other arts and humanities qualifications in that they follow an interdisciplinary level 1 and then undertake 2 compulsory level 2 modules in music and 2 at level 3. And at level 2, these 2 modules are A224 Inside Music, which is really a look at the nuts and bolts of music, how music works in terms of its harmony, its form, its texture. And A232 Music, Sound and Technology, which is the new module we're running for the first time this presentation. And then at level 3, there's a module called Central Questions in the Study of Music, A342, which is really an introduction to how music works within its social and cultural contexts, asking questions about what music means and what sort of social work does it do. And then finally, there's this collaborative module with Trinity, Laban, Conservatoire of Music and Dance, which allows students to really reflect on their own music making. Now, students don't need to be particularly high-level performers or indeed have much experience at all as practical music makers, but they need to be performing with at least one other person in order to reflect on that. And that's really why I think this degree is really exciting for us, because it offers that chance for students who perhaps haven't been studying music at all, who perhaps haven't even learnt to play an instrument, to nonetheless do something and perhaps join a choir and learn to engage with other musicians and reflect on that music making practice. And besides that, there's a huge amount of, we're quite proud about the amount of music that they study and the different types and the different varieties of music they encounter. So it's not just about studying Western classical music, as some people might think, although music history is a large part of what they do. But students also engage with contemporary popular culture. So they study everything from Bach, Mozart and Beethoven to Kate Bush, Radiohead and Elton John, you know. But they also engage with jazz, with the blues and with non-Western music as well, things like music of sub-Saharan Africa. So they really get a really broad introduction to all types of different music from all kinds of different cultural backgrounds. And the way that they study it as well is not just a case of studying the notes or doing something with the notes, either creatively or analytically. They sort of function as cultural historians in some ways, so they learn about how they learn to see a culture through the lens of its music. They also learn to analyse how music works as sound, and in fact that's part of what the new module A232 does. Students learn to analyse the sound of music. And that really helps them to reflect on their own listening experiences as well. So it's this kind of combination of historical study, creative practice. So as part of A232, They learn to create a mobile phone ringtone, which is absolutely fantastic. And in the A224, they write their own song. So there's a creative element to it. And then there's an analytical element as well. So it really covers a huge range of things that people do in higher education music.
That's so unique, I guess. I mean, perhaps even globally, because you're not just doing your theory, you're not just playing, you're also learning a lot about, from the social sciences and you know, from an arts perspective as well, how things are created and also how we look at those things,
Absolutely.
both in terms of different locations and time and space.
Yes, I mean, you could say that all cultures have featured some kind of music. So you could even say that, you know, to be human involves making some kind of music. So music provides a really valuable way to learn something about people. You know, you're not just learning about the music itself in a kind of bubble. You're using that study to reveal something about culture more generally.
Yeah.
And that's why it's such a fascinating subject.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. In fact, somebody I'm talking to a bit later about environment and society is using sound to create an image, you know, of how people see a certain place, etc. So sound is very evocative, both in terms of the technical side of things and also what makes music. But the sound technology is really interesting and very, very unique. And this is the new module, isn't it, Bob?
That's right. Yes, it goes live in October this year.
Yeah.
And so we're finishing off writing it and getting it ready now. So we're very excited about seeing it come to fruition. It's a very practical module. It's a module in which you get to do a lot of stuff with music. As Ben said, there's a broad range of things that you do across the whole degree. But this module is one where you have to do quite a bit of studying and understanding, but the emphasis is on doing things with what you discover. You make recordings, you change the way that sounds are heard. You look at them through the lens of technology in order to understand the nature of sound itself.
Now, Ben mentioned that a lot of people studying this qualification don't necessarily want to, you know, be a musician or note read. There are a variety of sort of different motivations that people would have, and that you don't have to necessarily want to be a performing artist or great cellist to be able to do one of these qualifications. Who is then interested in something like the sound technology module?
Well,
do you need to note read?
No, you don't. There's it's one of the modules in which you don't have to be able to read music in order to study it. Obviously, you can read music. That's a lovely skill. It's a very important transferable skill, and so on and so forth. But this isn't one that we need you to do in studying this. A lot of people get put off studying music because they think they have to learn the nuts and bolts and notation. Well, we do teach the nuts and bolts and notation, but not all of our modules require them. This one does not, and the certificate that we do in collaboration with Trinity Laban doesn't either. We have quite a few musicians who don't read the notes in order to play. They improvise, they play by ear, they write music down using other systems rather than traditional music notation. And in the music, sound and technology module, you're looking at music as sound. It's there in the title. So the first thing you do is you use a computer-based piece of software to look at a piece of music, but look at it as just a sound trace. And you ask yourself, what can we find out about that? Which goes beyond or is different from what you can see if you look at a musical score, a printed score.
I'd like to just take a quick trip to the hot desk because people are talking and I'd like to hear what they're saying. And we have a new person, Kath, welcome from the student support team. So you're dealing with the chat as well this afternoon.
Yeah.
How is everyone at home?
Everyone is good. There's a lot of biscuit talk going on.
It is that time of day, though, Kath, and that is a common thing.
Yeah. We have got an interesting question. I was trying to find the answer, but I didn't know. Apparently there's an OU module which can take the place of the ABRSM Level 5 theory. Is that right?
It depends exactly what you mean.
As in something to do with your spare time?
They're talking about associated board grade theory, grade 5 theory, which is a kind of is a standard which some other universities require you to have as the amount of music theory you know before you start. Now, we don't require you to have a particular level of theory before you start. We have freely available materials on OpenLearn called An Introduction to Music Theory, and that it's not meant to correlate with the Royal Schools of Music Associated Board qualification, but it gets you started on the understanding music theory. It gets you up to the same kind of knowledge of the nuts and bolts of writing music, understanding how chords and melodies work, that you do from that kind of qualification.
And that goes up to about grade 3, I think, that free
roughly.
course. Whereas A224 will go much higher than grade 5 ABRSM.
Yeah,
Okay.
so something that's not a module gets you up to rather before the same
Yeah.
sort of level. Something that is a module gets you up considerably
Yeah.
further, is really the message.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you.
Lovely. Damon?
Yeah, there's a lot of interest even from people who aren't studying music. So I don't, about the different cultures that you were saying about the nature of contemporary music on the module,
Yeah.
because I think there was a lot of thought that it was more about classical music rather than contemporary and non-Western. So there's a lot of excitement about that. And also Mary saying that she spent 18 years with the Oxford Bach Choir. So lots of practical aspects about what people are doing as well.
Yeah.
And doing that with 3 children at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
impressive.
Excellent. So let's think about some of the sorts of things then, because we've got some examples from the module. So what do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about some of the ways that students use sound, or shall we give them an example?
Shall we give them an example
Yes,
first?
let's.
I always believe if you talk about music, you have to listen to something.
Okay.
So, you know.
So we've got something that we're going to play that you can listen to, and then you can tell us what you think it is. So on the screen you'll see the widget "What is this sound?" and you can select one of the items: footsteps in the snow, a dog eating a carrot, or a nearly complete TMA. So let's play the sound for you. Right, so let's see what you had to say about that. If you haven't voted already, do click on the item that you think the answer is. What is this sound? Is it footsteps in the snow, a dog eating a carrot, or a nearly complete TMA? So is this the sort of thing that's in the module before we get the answer?
Yes, it is. In fact, that recording is something that is in the module. I'll talk about it in a moment. It was recorded on something a bit like this.
Right.
This is a portable stereo digital recorder. And this is one of the pieces of kit that you need in order to study the module. We don't ask you to buy any set books for this module, but we do ask you to get yourself one of these. They're not particularly expensive. There's a list of suitable models and so on you get beforehand. But the important thing is that you can take digital stereo recordings with this, and in fact that's what was used for recording that sound. And you make recordings yourself. One of the first things you do is you get it out of the box, you make a recording, and you play it back, and then you ask yourself, how could this be a bit better? What was wrong with it? Is there background noise? Is it not quite what I expected? And you go from there and throughout the module, you learn a bit of the technique of how to make recordings, and also things you can do with them once you've made them, which is
Bring
a
them
nice
on
thing.
here and play them and see what everyone says.
You can indeed,
Let's
that's
see
right.
what people said at home. So, everyone got it right. Sorry, I've spoiled the answer now. And I sounded really disappointed. And the only reason is because I've tried and my dog won't eat carrots
Well,
or strawberries.
my colleague Sean, who made that recording, said he didn't know that dogs ate carrots until he found his dog eating one. And so he got the recorder out and made a recording of it. But it's not just because it's an interesting thing. It's an unusual thing to happen. The point is, once you've got a recording of any sort, and that's a kind of it's a bit of sound. Once you've got a bit of sound, you can load it into your computer and you can look at it. Now, we've got 2 pieces of software as part of this module, one of which is called Sonic Visualizer, is for looking at sounds and analysing their kind of sonic capabilities. And the other is called Reaper, and that is like a recording studio inside your computer. It enables you to manipulate the sound and change it. And once you've made a recording, which could be a dog eating a carrot or indeed anything else, you can snip out a little bit of it.
Other people have changed their minds, apparently.
Oh, right. You can snip out a little bit of it and then do things with it. In fact, yesterday, because I was coming on here, I took a little bit out of the middle of that recording and I started playing with it and to do something. Now, on the screen, you can see one of the programs that you get to use. This is part of the module materials. This one's called Sonic Visualizer. And at the top, you can see there's a sound wave, a piece of sound. In fact, that's not the dog eating a carrot, that's a Beethoven symphony. We have a tradition of always starting our modules with a Beethoven symphony if we can.
And why not?
And why not? And then underneath there are two very powerful ways of analysing it using that program. But the other one, I think we got a screenshot of the other one as well. Yes, this is Reaper, and that is the dog eating a carrot going along the top. As you can see, it's on 2 channels, and you can manipulate them to make it change a bit. And I think we've got the sound which I did yesterday, which is a little bit of a dog eating a carrot, but kind of jazzed up a little bit.
Okay, so let's take a listen to how that sounded when you manipulated it. Not traditional jazz.
Not that. But once you start doing that, because there's a bit it was going round and round in a loop and then going against itself in the loop, you start getting a bit of rhythm to it. And it becomes, it's not a piece of music yet, but it's the sort of thing you could start turning into a piece of music.
It reminds me of Steve Reich's kind of piano phase music, where you take the same track essentially, then play it slightly out of phase with each other, and eventually it locks back in and creates a really hypnotic effect.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And in fact, the acoustic phenomenon of phase and phase relationships in sound waves is the kind of topic of that little bit of the module. You get to look at acoustics, you get to look at performance, you get to look at practicalities of recording, and we're very excited about it. And we hope people, whether they're intending to follow a music degree or whether they want to do a little bit of music within their open degree, we'll take a look at the new module.
Brilliant. Now, we must talk about the relationship with Trinity Laban, because this is such a unique thing. And one thing I particularly love about it is that you don't have to be amazing. You don't have to be, you can be a singer, for example.
Absolutely.
Or not a very good singer to go there. But the whole idea is to get an experience as a performer. And I think that's a wonderful, aspect of this qualification.
It is. I mean, and it's part of music education that we haven't, up till now, been able to offer. And all we require is that students are playing with at least one other person, that they're able to reflect on their own performance. And in fact, one of the best things about the Trinity course is that it offers a chance for students to come together for a week-long residential and make music together, which is absolutely essential, I think, to understanding how music works. And of course, they also have access to the kind of conservatoire level of interaction with
Which must be an amazing experience.
Indeed, and yet they don't have to audition either. I
Yeah.
think some students are worried that they may have to audition for the course, but it's totally non-auditioning.
Yeah. In fact, some students I know have taken up making music with other people in order to follow the module. And that's perfectly okay. It might be something you've never done previously, but absolutely, you can join a choir, or you can...
Form a band with your dog.
Form a band.
Form a band with your dog. Well, one of the things you do, one of the very first things you do is you interview the other people you make music with, and you also write a bit about what motivates you to make music with other people. So if it was a dog, you'd have difficulty getting the interview data, I think. But it's completely open as to the genre you play or the standard of performance when you come into it, and it's all about looking at what you do, why you love it, and why other people should listen to you. It's very practical. It's about what makes people love music as a subject, and looking at that rigorously, but looking at it from that lens of a practitioner who loves what they do.
Oh, it sounds absolutely brilliant. So students can find out more how? We've got some PDFs on the Student Hub Live website.
Yeah,
I know that.
There's a PDF which essentially outlines the structure of the degree. But of course, the usual websites will have all that information as well.
Brilliant. So you can go to study at the OU and find out more about the qualifications, etc. And also the qualification websites are a great place to look as well.
Definitely.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for filling us in on that degree. And I know that so many students have been looking forward to that. I'm off now to form my band, The Dog and the Carrots. So wish me luck.
We'll sign you up.
And we've got another video to play you before our next session. So the video we're going to play is Exploring Religion, because we'll be joined by Suzanne Newcombe to talk about religious studies in a few minutes. So join us for that next session shortly. See you then.